Hello everyone. Well, we've gone through the first 6 chapters of the Intro to R course in DataCamp. But as you can probably see, the textbook that we're using is moving a little faster than what we had looked at in DataCamp. That's okay. We're not going to have to learn every little command. We're not going to have to memorize every little function or every little thing in R. But there are a couple of things I want you to know about right off the bat. And the first one is how to load data in R. That was, when I first learned R, was one of the most frustrating exercises I ever went through, was to figure out how to get a data file to load into R. So I'm going to try to save you a whole lot of frustration and show you 2 ways that you can do this. One way is the way that they do it in the book. The other way is through RStudio. Before we do that, though, let's talk about some commands. So we have a data set, and we have 2 ways that we can load it. There is a command, a function I should say, called read.csv. And read.csv is loaded into R, and you'll be able to actually use that function to load your file. You can also use RStudio. RStudio is a little easier. There's one extra step that you have to do to make things look like they look in the book, but again, it's still a little easier. So loading data in R. Let's take a look at the command that they have. They are using housing.df, which is a data frame. It's being set to read.csv, which is a function, actually. And what you will do is when you set a data frame up to be set up with a function like that, what it's going to do is it's going to run the function, and the results of the function are going to be what gets put into the data frame. So with read.csv being a function, what we're going to do is we're going to read the file, and the file that we're going to read is the one they're referring to in the book. I have downloaded it and provided it to you, so you should be able to drop it onto your computer somewhere and be able to access it. But it's westroxbury.csv. And the only other part of the command that they use and that we're going to use is header equals true. So a few things about this command. Housing.df is a data frame, and you know about data frames from your DataCamp modules. Read.csv is a function that was designed to read and load a .csv file. There's a similar function for other types of files. The westroxbury.csv can be referred to in this manner because it resides in the working directory, and we'll talk about that in a second. And header equals true is basically used to indicate that the first row of the data will be used as your column headers. Okay, so now let's go into more detail on this. Loading the data. Okay, more about loading the data. You already know about data frames from your R chapters. Read.csv is a function. Let's talk about functions. Much of R is functions. They're basically little tiny programs that expect you to pass them arguments. And read.csv is no exception. But some of the other ones that you've already seen, such as view and dim and head and things like that, are also functions. They are functions. They're little, like I said, little bits of code to which you pass an argument or a series of arguments, and something gets done to that, or it causes something to happen. So functions operate as, in that format, the name of the function, and then whatever the parameters you're passing to the function, those are included in parentheses. Examples that I already just mentioned that you've already seen on page 24 are dim, head, and view. I want to note an error here on the slide. Dim is in lowercase d. Head should be lowercase d. Microsoft PowerPoint changes it to capital, and I didn't catch it. View, however, is the one exception where it really is capital V. R is very case sensitive, so you'll learn very quickly that if you don't use the right case, you don't get the right results. Many functions are native to R. When you first load up R or RStudio, it has a ton of functions built in, and many of those are the ones you're going to want to use. But some of the more advanced ones are not. And if they're not included in native R, you can install them as packages. Remember, R is open source. Because it's open source, there's all kinds of stuff being written all the time for it. And so those are oftentimes put together in packages. And there might be like a statistical package. A good one is the package that you use to load an Excel file. You have to actually go out and install that package first before you can load your Excel file. And then the next thing you have to do is, once it's installed, it's installed. If you want to use it, you have to specify that it's a library. It's a library that will work in your environment that you're working in. So we'll talk more later on about packages, how they're installed, and how they're made available to you. The data file itself, in this example, westroxbury.csv is the data file. Okay, but it's not as simple to load as you might think, or as the book makes it look. When you start R on your PC, it identifies a single working directory. It's one directory on your PC or whatever computer you're using, and that's where it looks for everything. That's fine if you know what that directory is. If you don't know what that directory is, you can run a command in R, in the R environment, called get working directory. It's GETWD. It's a function, so of course it needs whatever follows to be in parens. In this particular case, there's nothing that we pass to that function. There's no argument, so it's just get working directory, open paren, close paren. And it'll tell you what your working directory is. So the easiest thing for you to do is put your westroxbury.csv file in that working directory. And that's just a matter of copying and pasting. Another thing you can do is you can set your working directory. If you don't like where your working directory is, or if you want to set your working directory to where your West Roxbury file is, you can use a command called set working directory. So set WD, and then that one you actually do pass an argument to. The argument is going to be your directory. Not the name of the file, but just the directory, the path to the directory that you want to use. Or a third option is you can use read.csv, and you can include in parens the full file and name. Okay, so I would still say the easiest thing to do is just to move your file to the current current working directory. The header. The last part of the command, of the load command, is that header equals true. Now I put it in quotes. It's actually not in quotes in the command. The westroxbury.csv name is, but the header equals true is not. It says that the file has a header row in the first row, which is fine, because our file does. We're going to use the header as column names, and in R, both true and false are capitalized. That's just a designation. It's just a factor of R, that the true and false, the booleans, are capitalized. Okay, so let's actually go load the data. Find the right directory, find the right place. Okay, this is native R. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to load the file into a data frame using read.csv. Remember, it's a function, so I have to have parentheses. In this case, the file name is going to be in quotes. Close that out with a quote. Put a comma between the two arguments. Close it out with a paren. Doesn't look like it did anything, but it also didn't throw me an error. If I want to check it, use a view function. Remember, that's what's supposed to be capitalized. And it will give me another window that shows me the file. So now my file is loaded, and it is loaded as a data frame, and I'm all set to go. The other way to do this is to go into RStudio, and there are two ways to get to the ability to import a data set. The first one is to go to this particular quadrant where it says import data set, pull down from text-based. This is basically a text-based file. We'll find our file. It's West Roxbury, and this way you could browse for the file, which is what makes this a little easier. It sets pretty much everything we want here. We do have a heading. We're separated by comma. We're all good to go. We can hit import, and it will import our file for us. Okay. And it calls it West Roxbury. We can then say, go down to the right quadrant, set it equal to just take that. And now we have our data frame, VIW. Oh no, it's the wrong one. Housing.df. Could have done it either way, actually. And it shows us up above what our values are. So that's two ways we can load the data. You see the examples in the book. What I would invite you to do is to go ahead and turn to page 24 and work through some of the commands that they have there. The first command is to actually load the data file. There is one little anomaly in the fact that when you load the data file into RStudio, it puts an underscore where there normally would be a space. When you load it into native R, it puts a period where there would normally be a space in the header. So when you start accessing some of the actual columns, individual columns, you might find that you have a bit of a challenge depending on the way that you have loaded the data. Just pay attention to the way that the headers are set up. But go ahead and work through some of the exercises in page 24 and get your hands wet, a little bit wet with some of the more advanced commands, and get a good, comfortable feel for how you can load a data file. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions.